All right, thank you. Mr. Dixon, are you here?
Yes.
Yeah, good evening once again.
Good evening.
We are back again from our last session where we talked about tax in our jurisdiction and beyond and how we all needed to have an idea what that is and how we could benefit from it. Mr. Dixon did a very great job by giving us the nitty gritty of whatever that is entailed therein in that topic. However, due to time constraint, we could not attend to questions, and we are here today so that he could help us understand in a layman view some of the technical things people asked and really need to be addressed. So, without much ado, I welcome Mr. Dixon Odro to facilitate this session. And we all know we are expecting nothing but the best because we've seen from the last session. I'm sure today he's going to summarize it to a very simplest form where anybody who have no idea what tax could feel like a professor afterwards. So without much ado, I give him the floor and we start to answer what is in front of us today. And whosoever is joining or whosoever is already to join, you're welcome. We are here learning, growing to get all the benefits together. Good evening once again.
All right. Good evening, and thank you very much for the introduction. And a good evening to our audience and viewers as well. So we received a number of questions, and we'll try and respond to all the questions that we've received. That notwithstanding, if you do have something else that comes to mind and you want to ask, you could put that question in the comment box, and if time permits, we will react or respond to that question as well. Right. So what we'll do is we'll delve into the questions that we received from some of our viewers. The question might not have come from you, but I guess if you listen in, it may be useful to you as well, right? So what I'll do is that I'll call out the question that we receive from the person, and then we will give a response to that. If you also have like a commentary to make, you can put that in the chat box as well. It shouldn't necessarily be for questions. If there is something you want to add on, that's something you can do. And doctor, please feel free to interject if you want to add on
Yeah,
or you
yeah.
want to ask a question so that it is clarified further, right?
All right, thank
So
you.
the first question we received is who qualifies for tax relief in Ghana? It's very interesting because I guess people want to know what benefits they can be afforded in the Tax Act. So our response is very simple. It depends because the last time we explained that there are different forms of taxes. But I guess this person is interested to find out what relief he can get from income tax because the indirect taxes, the previous session we explained that those are not supposed to be borne by the guy undertaking the business. It's rather the consumer. So I'm putting this question in the context of income tax. So an individual that earns income tax, let's say an employee that earns employment income and is subject to employment income tax. To qualify for what we call the personal reliefs under the Income Tax Act, you need to be a resident individual. And a resident individual is defined in the Income Tax Act. Ordinarily, if you're a Ghanaian or if you're a citizen, you qualify as a resident because that is the first identifying mark of a tax resident. Then, if you are not a citizen, but then you spend 183 days or more in Ghana in a particular year, and tax, we don't calculate a year from just January to December. If you enter the country from, let's say, July to December, we will start counting our year from July that year to June the following year, right? So it's any 12-month period. The calculation can start from December, it can start from September, or it can even start from January 15th or whenever. Yeah. So if any individual spends 183 days in Ghana, it qualifies the person as a resident as well. So to qualify for personal reliefs, you need to be a resident person in Ghana, an individual in Ghana. And it's either you're a citizen or you are not a citizen, but you spend 183 days here, or you are a citizen of Ghana, but you work in an embassy, a Ghanaian embassy abroad. Because the immunity idea is that, let's say the US embassy here in Ghana, that tract of land still qualifies as the land of USA. So it's a mere extension of USA in Ghana. So similarly, if you're a Ghanaian and you are working outside, but then you are working in a Ghanaian embassy outside, technically speaking, you are still working in Ghana. So because you qualify as a resident or tax resident for Ghana tax purposes, you can be afforded those tax reliefs. So you just need to be a Ghanaian or a resident Ghanaian to qualify for the reliefs. If there is no further question on this, I'll move on to the next question. The next question is, what is the biggest problem with taxes? The person did not give additional detail as to what the problem is, but I will assume that the person is asking why, people tend not to like to pay taxes, right? And why
Or
every
people
time,
evade.
exactly, almost every time, the government knows taxes will make our lives worse, but then they keep on introducing taxes, right? So I think I would say this is a very economic and philosophical question, and I don't necessarily have the exact answer or response, but I will hazard an opinion. And my opinion is the problem with taxes is generally around the perception of people or citizens with regards to the social contract between their elected leaders and them as citizens. Because we elect our leaders to come and lead the economy, to come and lead the country, to deliver prosperity, right? On the government side, they need money to run the government machinery. And most of these monies are gotten from taxes. Um, a lot of countries have profit generating ventures. So Qatar Airways, for instance, it generates a lot of profit or revenue for the Qatar government, right? Ghana, we do not have like any state-owned enterprise that generate any decent profit. I think they are all loss making. A few of them make profit. So I think what the only source of income that is available to the government is just tax or to receive aid from the Western countries. But now with the USA wahala and all, it means that inflow will also go down. So they will just have to resort to taxes. So I think if the populace just understand the contract that they have with the guys that they've elected, the mandate that has been given them, and the way through which that mandate can be discharged, I think it can help resolve um, that misperception or misconception around taxes. Because I think down here, everyone wants to kind of avoid taxes. Some of the questions someone asked, how can I reduce the amount I pay as taxes? We'll come to that. So once we just get to understand why we need to pay the taxes, and those guys also administer the taxes fairly, equitably, such that the rich are paying their fair share of taxes and they are not like dodging the tax, and it's only the middle income or the low income earners that are almost always paying the taxes. I think the problem with tax will be resolved. And when we deliver a lot of success for the economy, a time will come that we don't necessarily need to resort to taxes again. So you go to Saudi Arabia, for instance, they don't charge any income tax. So if you have a friend that is working in Dubai, you can ask. They don't charge, they intend to introduce it, but the intention is even to apply to companies and not individuals. Subsequently, individuals may be subject to tax. So over there, you could say that, they've advanced to a stage where they notice that they need to leave their citizens or residents, whomever is working there, to have full access to their income. So I think that is the response I'll give now. Yes, doctor, please come in.
Yeah, so yes, what Mr. Dixon said, everything is right, but I think to our jurisdiction, I have done some level of research in property tax, and I can tell you why people would evict not necessarily property taxes. One of the fact that we lack trust in the government, right? Education is also another issue, right? That you are more informed and you know that aside paying, there's a benefit that can be due you.
Yeah,
My mother in the village would think that how can I suffer and make my money? And then in my local parlance, we say lampo, and you come and then collect the money from me again. But if my mother was able to see social amenities that the government is able to say that these are the things or the reasons why we tax you, better health systems, better roads, portable drinking water. In fact, in the northern region of Ghana, for the past 2 months, there has been so much drought for water. Who could have believed that an ever growing city in the country would have to face this? People have forgotten about the children that are born, the hospital, the elderly people, etc. And you come boom, you want people to pay tax. Since they do not see the benefit, or those who enjoy it should be those paying those taxes. Of course, norms play a role. And another thing I think is complexity of our laws. Tax laws should be streamlined because looking at our human capital level, tax policies should just be streamlined to the very easiest, convenient for everybody to be able to, understand and comply. Sometimes you are going to pay a tax, a legal obligation that you think you want to be a good citizen. And the stress alone, you're getting to the tax office, systems are not working. They'll say, our network is down. Filing a tax can take you more than a week to do. I have been a victim, which is not fair. The complexities of our system, somewhere in the world, is not like that. And as you mentioned, when we grow to a particular point, we don't necessarily have to depend on tax. But at the stage we are, you and I have to agree that we need taxes to thrive, right? And all these nuisance taxes they have to forcefully bring to board, it's not necessary if the laws available alone were able to effectively enhance the way we collect the tax and not let it stop there, and also be accountable how we use the revenue, would have been so much of a relief. Look at the amount that leaked to financial malfeasances, corruption. Sometimes in a year, in a fiscal year as a country, we lose so much corruption than the amount of money we even go for a bailout. So there are, yes, even though the person is not too open, but these are some of the reasons why we are all running, right? Which is not fair because so long as I'm very aware these are the reasons why, I should be able to do it freely. Income levels also count. We live in a country whereby you see a minimum wage is way below even the poverty line, and we said we are also striving for SDGs. The last time I asked a question, and which is just valid, that are we coming or we are going? Because we go to the World Fund and we talk and talk and talk. When we come back here, you see international or multinational coming to our country and using our citizens anyhow because they are looking at the way the government treats its people and use it as a baseline to treat their employees. If I'm struggling to even feed on what I am able to earn, why won't I run away from taxes? So it's a broader perspective. And I think going forward, people just have to live beyond politics and become so objective on how we tackle these issues. If people are really aware, if people are educated, if inequality gaps are closed and we know that we can benefit from tax, we will not evade, we will not run away. But it will be painful for me to be paying my tax, right? And somebody will just use overnight and do financial malfeasance. I'm working from here. And then they will turn around to be what? Motivational speakers So work hard when I was this and what hard work did you do that I didn't do? That overnight you see somebody working from any of those agencies. In fact, they want to work. Look, assuming there's a consultancy work for them to work outside the country, the city, almost all of them run to go because my insider information tells me that's where the money is. So instead of doing the right things, they want to do things and be paid. And the money doesn't even go to government coffers and government doesn't even care. And we are living in a country where we just do things haphazardly. It's not based by research. And a country that is going to suffer and suffer, this is the characteristics. You can read it in the literature. Any country that is advanced got its fundamentals from a solid research and they work with the research. But way here is not easy. 2 days ago, I read something on tax evasion. Very sarcastic, but really worrying. Somebody said, as a Ghanaian businessman, you will not pay your taxes, and a Lebanese too will not also pay. But guess whose shop will be closed with chains? You get a perspective. Corruption, favoritism. Who do you know? And it is all heartbreaking because in the long run, inequality gaps widen up. They cannot get the taxes where they are supposed to get. They end up bringing these nuisance taxes and they get direct to us, especially depending on the type of commodity we are consuming. And then poverty gaps widen up and go to the World Friend and said, Ghana economy grew by 4.5%. Hell no, we are not talking about economic growth. Enough. We're talking about inclusive growth. Ghana economy has grown 4.5. What was the growth level in my mother's village? Did they have potable water to drink? Could they afford the basic meals? Could they live beyond the poverty line? So this is tax evasion is really a worrying situation, and in fact, your opinions are valid and just emotional. And we just hope one day we rise above here as a country. So this question is, even though it's not open, it gives us that idea to reflect and even to our closer cycles, what they've gone through and what we have gone through. So thank you for this question. It really brings back a lot of memories that I don't even want to think. And thank you, Mr. Dixon, for doing justice to this, even though the question wasn't open. Thank you. Hello, can you hear me? I can hear you.
Sorry, I think I was muted. I'm
Yeah,
so sorry, everyone. Yes.
sorry. So I think we have to
So
rewind again.
so basically, I said thank you for giving a lot of perspective around this,
Mm,
and that it boils down to the fact that the government needs not take its citizens for a ride. There was a
yeah,
reason we elected them
yeah.
to those positions. There's a reason why we've given them the power to sign laws or pass laws that will be able to collect the taxes. And we need to see like a very fair and equitable way in which the tax is being administered and more importantly utilized, because it's not just about collecting the taxes but also utilizing those taxes in a way that will automatically kind of engender voluntary compliance. And I cited an example of an East African country where even taxi drivers, when it's deadline for them to file their taxes, you see they'll be like in the taxi with you or boat with you, and they'll tell you, "Can I park briefly 2 minutes? I want to file my taxes." Because Very simple, not as complex as we have here in Ghana, like you rightly mentioned. And I think over there too, they've been sensitized a lot. So I think Illumine is doing a very good job trying to get people to understand tax and some very technical concepts, right? So the third question is, what allowance is not taxable in Ghana? And it's a very interesting question because I get this a lot, a couple of times when people get an employment offer or appointment offer, they call and ask that, oh, Dixon, where can I put some of my benefits so that I pay lower taxes or I don't pay any tax? Um, Sorry to burst your bubble. Unfortunately, in Ghana, every allowance is taxable. So an allowance is as taxable as the normal basic salary. It's because in the Income Tax Act, there is a specific provision covering allowances that they are taxable. And also the fact that every profit or benefit that you get from employment is subjected to tax. So there is no allowance that is exempt from tax. Every allowance is taxable, whether you put it in transportation risk, accommodation, meals, however you couch it, it will be taxable, right? That notwithstanding, there are some two forms of benefit that you receive that, although they are taxable, the tax rate could be concessionary. By that, I mean it can be drastically reduced. And the first one is bonus. So if you receive a bonus, the bonus amount is up to less than 15% of your annual basic salary. The tax law allows that bonus is taxed at 5%. But then, assuming your annual basic salary is 150,000, right? And you earn bonus of 180,000. It means 150,000 of this 180,000 will be subjected to tax at the 5%. The 30%, sorry, the 30,000 that is left would unfortunately be mixed with your normal salary and taxed at the 0% to 35%. So that is for bonus. 5% up to 15% of your annual basic salary. Then another form of income that you could receive in employment that may have that reduced tax rate is overtime. But let's be cautious here. The benefit for overtime is only applicable to some people that we call the junior qualifying employees. Junior qualifying employees. And the tax law defines who a junior qualifying employee is. But before I come into the technicals, let me just give you an idea of the people that this tax law was targeted to, or this tax benefit was targeted to. It was largely targeted to, let's say, if you go to the factory, the guys that will help with janitorial duties, the security persons, the drivers, these guys don't earn a lot of money, right? So in the wisdom of the drafters of the law, they said, okay, if these guys are dedicating their weekends or night times to still work, someone comes to the factory as a security guy, works from, let's say, 6 p.m. to the next morning, 6 a.m. It doesn't speak well of the government if they are taxing them like the guys that will work with the daylight, right? So these people were the target of the tax benefit. And these guys, the tax law defines them as, so who qualifies as a junior qualified employee? A junior qualified employee is someone who does not earn more than 18,000 Ghana cedis in a year. That is very low. So it means a lot of you guys won't qualify. So this benefit doesn't mean anything to you. 18,000 per year means 1,500 cedis a month. So assuming you were a NAPCO person and you were earning overtime, this benefit will qualify because you don't earn up to 1,005 a month. But if you earn up to 1,005 a month, then this benefit doesn't mean anything to you. But then what is the benefit? The benefit is 50% of your salary, 50% of the overtime is taxed at 5%. Then the remaining 50% is taxed at 10%. As simple as that. But then this qualifies for um, um, junior qualifying employees, people that earn not more than 18,000 Ghana cedis in a year. And on a monthly basis, that will mean people that earn not more than 1,500. So let me cite an example. So let's say you're a junior qualifying employee, you earn 1,005 and you get overtime of 1,000 for the month because maybe you did some night shifts. What that means is, out of this 1,000, how much is 50% of your salary? 50% of 1,005 is 750, right? So 750 of the overtime will be taxed at 5%. Then the remaining 250 of the overtime, because the remaining 250 pushes you into the second 50% or the next half of your salary, and that will be taxed at 10%. So apart from the bonus that applies to everyone, even non-residents, you don't have to be a resident to get this benefit. Provided you're an employee in Ghana and you earn employment income, as well as annual bonus, you get that benefit. The overtime is just targeted towards the junior qualifying employees, right? Please, any reaction, or we can move on to the next.
Yeah, we can move on. I think
Yeah.
that's fine.
Then the next question is, who is exempted from tax in Ghana? It's very interesting that this question keeps coming up, although in different ways, right? The first one was who can obtain some form of a tax relief, and we'll see this question again somewhere else, couched differently. So it depends. It depends. To respond to who is exempted from tax in Ghana, it depends. It depends on the tax that you are looking at. So we go back to the discussion we had the other week, that there are different laws. Tax is a creation of law, and there are different laws that cover each relevant tax. And most of these tax laws will define who is exempted from such tax. I'll just talk about maybe 3 major taxes that affect all of us, or major tax laws that affect all of us. Then I'll talk about some few people that are exempted. But then if you read the law end to end, you typically identify that several people are even exempted, depending on how you go around the transaction. So I'll start with income tax, because people are mostly interested in what comes to their pocket. And I think I already mentioned this the last time. So if you go into the Income Tax Act, right, Section 7, they list all the guys that are exempted from income tax there. And I'll mention a few, but if you have the chance to obtain a copy of this, it's on the internet. Just type Ghana Income Tax Act and they will show you a copy. If you go to Section 7, exempt amounts. So all these amounts are exempted from income tax. Number 1 is the salary, allowances, facilities, pension, and gratuity of the president in accordance with Section 68(5) of the Constitution. So this benefit was given to the government, to the president by the Constitution, and this has duly been reflected in the Income Tax Act, right? Then the government of Ghana in general is exempted from income tax, unless they go beyond what they have been set up to do. So the parliament, they have what they do. But let's all of a sudden, the parliament opens a bookstore and they want to sell books because some parliamentarian has written a book. That is not part of the mandate of the parliament. So that one will be taxable. Another example is a local authority or a state organization that is backed by law. And let me cite an example, a university, for instance. The services that you offer, which is education, you get tuition fees and all. So that's the income that you are earning from giving education. All these are exempted from tax based on Section 7 of the Income Tax Act. However, if you undertake another business that is not necessarily your mandate, that will be taxable. And let me cite an example. Beyond the halls that have been set up, if let's say the university set up, let's say, a banking square and invite banks or banks to come and install their ATM machines or to have branches there, and these banks pay rent to the university will be required to pay taxes on that, because their mandate to offer or provide education is not necessarily tied with that rental activity that they are undertaking. You are not kind of barred from doing it, you can do it. But it's just that the tax benefit that you get from being a university for that peculiar activity, that will be withheld because you're undertaking a commercial activity. But if you set up, let's say, a lecture room or lecture theater and people go there for lectures, I mean, even if someone were to give you money, that is totally exempted from income tax. Then who else is exempted? The income of a cocoa farmer is exempted from income tax. Then if you are non-resident and you're operating ships or aircraft in Ghana, that is also exempted. This may not necessarily resonate with a lot of our viewers, so I'll quickly move on. So let's say the Qatar Airways, the ET Airlines, the Kenya Airways, all those guys, they don't pay taxes in Ghana. But the expectation is that if our Ghana Airways were to be working, when we go and take passengers from there, come to Ghana, to other international locations, we will also not pay taxes over there, but we'll only pay taxes here. Then those guys that work at the embassies, not the Ghanaians, the employees from other nationals, other nations, the nationals from other countries, yeah, those guys, they are and working in the embassies, they are not supposed to pay taxes here. And we don't have IMF here. I don't think we have World Bank here. Those guys too are largely exempted from taxes because they
Yeah,
have
we have
immediate.
World Bank Ghana, we have
We
IMF, they
don't.
have, yeah, we have not necessary, they at the point they just set up to do
Okay,
some things on their research and other things.
okay. But
But
they
not,
do not have like a headquartered company
no,
here
no,
or
no, 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 no,
employee.
not like
Okay,
that.
that's fine.
Even
So
when they disperse, when we go for them begging and they come, they appoint somebody to be part of the team at
yeah,
the Bank of Ghana to just do
yeah,
them.
yeah. Right. Okay, so that's for income tax. Then when you go to VAT, so VAT, there are a lot of things that are also exempted from VAT. But again, let's remind ourselves, VAT is not supposed to be paid by the guy that is undertaking the business. It's rather the consumer, right? So if you are selling the fresh produce from the farm, those are usually exempted from tax, so VAT. So let's say maize, millet, sorghum, all those things, they are exempted. So I mean, if you go and buy that same thing, let's say wherever, even at the mall, ordinarily they are not supposed to charge VAT on that unless it's processed. If it's processed, you will have to pay VAT on it. But if it's raw, no VAT should apply on those ones. So the idea is just to encourage agriculture in Ghana. That is why those items are exempted from VAT, because last time we learned that VAT makes things quite expensive. Right, then education services. If you provide education and you are accredited or you are licensed or you are known by the Ministry of Education, that does not attract any VAT. Then medical services as well, that does not attract VAT. But if you go to, let's say, the hospital for something therapeutic beyond the counseling, consultation that are deemed to be medical services, if you go for, let's say, a spa session, you go for, is it acupuncture or something, those things that they will be piercing, yeah, some small needles at your back, all those things, those will qualify for VAT, because I think Ghana sees those as um, what is the term they use for that? Recreation. So if it is seen as like a recreational activity or a recreational benefit, VAT will apply. But if it's seen as like a medical service, then VAT is exempted. Then when you go to customs as well, there are several things that you import that they are exempted. If let's say you are working in the oil and gas industry and you are a non-resident, right, an expatriate, you are coming for the first time. There's something that we call personal effect. Let's say you have a very nice car there, you have a very nice TV, that you intend to bring everything from there to Ghana so that you have like a good working stay here in Ghana. That is exempted from custom duties. If you import some tractors for agricultural purposes, that is exempted. So who is exempted from tax is largely dependent on which tax act you are looking at. Like e-levy, for instance, if you send 100 cedis, you're exempted. So you necessarily need to review every law and come again. Do they deduct now 100 cedis?
Yeah, I'm just saying, don't even like. It's annoying. Like hundreds of
Yeah,
this
yeah. No, no, but in no time, e-levy will go off once that repeal
goes back to Parliament.
amendment, is signed. I think it's already laid before Parliament. So once
Has
they
that
lay,
no new taxes been introduced?
well, new taxes have been introduced, but then I think it's not for individuals, it's for companies. So mining companies, for instance, the growth and sustainability levy that used to be 1% has been increased to 3%, but that's purely just for the mining guys. And there were some taxes that were supposed to end at the end of the year. So we call it sunset clause. So every law, some laws can come in and are applicable in perpetuity. So
Yeah,
perpetually or eternally applicable until
yeah, I understand.
the world comes to an end. But there are
Yeah,
some laws that come for a specified period of time. And
yeah,
one of such is um, the Ghana stabilization levy,
yeah,
special import levy, those kind of things, right? So they had a sunset clause, meaning the sun will set on them and they will die off, right?
yeah.
And the
And
government
things
kind
are
of
better.
extended the sunset clause. So now they won't end in 2025 again. They've added like 3 more years.
Yeah.
So
So
not a lot.
this is a policy. So
Yeah.
game
So
of the same thing. Like you're taking this off, and of course, even though it's not, it's better because it's you have to be in a particular place to be able to have to pay that particular tax.
yeah,
It's better. It would still reduce burden, but I can't just wait for them to take off the e-levy and all those reasons,
yeah,
taxes, the COVID-19. I didn't have any problem if they continue to say, okay, we want to take COVID-19, but we want to make sure that we use it to improve the healthcare system of the rural folks or maybe something. You go to a regional hospital and gosh, you can't just think. As a woman, one thing that really bothers me is maternal health. You see somebody wife is pregnant, instead of just the pregnancy stresses alone, they are scared of how they would maltreat their wives or how somebody will use them as a case study in the hospital. Maybe we would have said, okay, we want to cushion research and when it comes to this, we want to do this and that. I didn't have a problem if I had to pay COVID levy and at the end of the day I'm seeing the benefit. But I have a problem if I have been paying COVID levy since 2019, 2020 till date, and then there's nothing to show of benefit. So we can't wait. It will always be like that. People, as I said earlier, we have to live beyond politics. They don't have any way to do it than to tax us. They don't have any way for now. So when they come and say we are removing this, just know it will come back gradually in a different
different.
form
Yeah,
and come back so that we enjoy it again. So yes, I'm glad you are clarifying because people would be wondering like mere politics. Oh, they've cancelled this, they've cancelled this, but there's another one's coming,
exactly.
right? So thank you.
All right. Thank you very much. Then the next question is, what is inheritance tax and how is it calculated in Ghana? I mean, now I think a lot of people have seen the need in setting up a will and making sure that their properties are not distributed interstate, right? So in Ghana, we do not have a law or a tax called inheritance tax. However, we have some two taxes that could kind of encumber you. So it will lay on you some form of a tax burden when you get a benefit from inheritance, right? So we don't have inheritance tax like, let's say, the UK has, but then we have other tax laws that can work to kind of lay some claim on you that, guy, you have received this benefit, and for that matter, you need to pay tax. Yeah. So it's either called realization gain tax
Yeah.
or a gift tax. So if you remember, there was a time, I think, one of the religious leaders, the daughter was getting married, and a group of young men and women presented, I think, 1 million check as a gift to the bride and, by extension, her bridegroom, right? And GRE wrote to
to that person.
this couple to request for taxes, right? At that time, it was unheard of for
Mhm.
Ghanaians that those gifts should be taxed. But then again, we
They
have
don't
what
know
we call
the
gift tax.
threshold.
Exactly.
Uh,
So the old gift tax had the threshold of 50 cedis, right? Then beyond that, so below 50 cedis you don't pay. But now that old gift tax has been scrapped off, right? And we are using the Income Tax Act now. So according to the Income Tax Act now, even if you earn 10 pesos, there's a gift tax on that. Unfortunately, yeah. So, in the Income Tax Act, we will call it realization gain
that
tax,
phase, yeah.
but into bracket we could say gift tax, right? And how does it operate? Realization is very simple. It's just like a benefit you've gotten on something, right? So let's say you are holding your wedding and I come and present you with 1,000 Ghana cedis. What is the benefit to you is 1,000, because the point is you did not work to get the 1,000. The calculation of the gain is very simple. What have you received? Consideration minus what was the cost you incurred. So you receive 1,000 cedis. What was the cost you incurred? Zero. So the benefit to you or the gain to you is 1,000. Then we tax it. The question is, how do we tax it? If you're an individual, you tax it using the 0 to 35% band. So if it's a very high amount, chances are you taxing it around the 25%, 30%, 35% rate, right? But then if it's a very low amount, then you'll be hovering around 0%, 5%, 10%, and 17.5, right? But then you, the individual, can elect. So usually I've seen that those who are high net worth guys, individuals, usually they want to elect because those guys earn a lot of money such that if they allow the benefit of the gift or the price of the gift to be included in their income, they will pay tax at 35. So they will kind of elect, right, to the GRA that I am electing that I pay tax at a lower rate. And the lower rate is 25%, unfortunately. So it's not like any very
But at
low
least
rate.
you're still better off
Exactly. Yeah. So if
in
you're a very
perspective.
high income earner, 35, then you can elect and pay at
Yeah.
25. But then if you're a very low income earner and you think you even pay tax at a lower rate than 25, then better for you to let them mix that gift value in your income and pay the taxes on it. But I'll be very blunt here. I think the collection of this tax has been a huge challenge because we send Momo almost every time. We send funeral donations almost every time. Something small to support your baby christening or outdooring. Something small to support your marriage or whatever.
So
So
our tax
it's
system
very
is
difficult.
very, very weak. Our tax
Yeah.
system is inefficient. Even though we have all the right laws in place, their applicability is the problem, right? In fact, I watched a funeral where they even put the box in there. They put mobile money number. If you send, then you do some gift check and they record and all that. And if I know Empress, whatever is doing the mother funeral, I just sent two beautiful tax people to sit there to monitor what happened. Whatever they get at the end of the day, they'll tell us what they incur, and the remaining will tax it. Because I am very sure deep down my heart that the number of people who troop into these kind of funeral don't donate anything less than 10,000.
Hmm.
And at the end of the day, people become rich out of their funerals. In
Yeah.
fact, I beg to differ. You people are those who do funeral so high. We Muslims do our funeral in a very lower perspective, and then cost wise. Like, but I've seen funerals in the Christian that is just so extravagant. One thing that is also applicable to us as Muslims, just a little bit of course, it's close, but we don't really do well. Of course, some Muslims do, but just some few in it. But in the Quran, it is stated how much who would benefit. Your wife die, how much you are entitled, how much your children, if the mother is still, the percentages are there in. An example, if I have a son and a daughter and their father died, God forbid, um, the son will be taking, maybe, if the son is taking 10%, the daughter is taking 5%. So the man is taking 100%, the lady is taking 50%. The widow has what they will take. If the man parents are there, it has how much the father and the mother will take, and vice versa. So it's kind of like a will in the Quran. But of course, time passes, there's a lot of chaos. People don't do what, they do it according to what they want, and they don't. And I think all these, you can find a way and integrate this to our tax systems. And even if you're a Muslim and this and that, these are some of the informations we have about if you die in this one, these are some of the things. Applicability. How much are they willing to spend on research? No, they are not willing to spend anything on research. When I went on doing property tax research at Trifo Hema in the central region, one of the key things they'll tell you that they don't even see those collecting tax to even pay. They don't see them. Convenience is not there. Nearness to tax office is not there. So the nearness, assuming they are doing a high level funeral, and then maybe you are aware of it or something, and you said, oh, you write to them and say, we are sending our tax. It would be kind of like a neck something, but that's the right thing to do.
Hmm.
Of course, we are all smart. There's no way nobody want to declare that much. But at least the little they declare, you are able to tax. If you go to Kumasi alone in a month, I'm sure you'll be able to have so much to solve a lot of problems they have. Ashanti region, when I was there, all the time. I mean, there hasn't been a weekend I will not see a funeral going on. And it's not small funerals. Like, you know that they are well invested in this. So the tax system, even though it's there, and even some African nations are emulating from us and applying it to the best of their ability and getting results, we are not really upholding to those laws. And over time, it's just politics, right? And to speak beyond political sentiment is not really easy. See anybody on TV, then Ghana, tax can be this one, and then there will be consequences, and there will still be people saying that no, this is good, this will do this will not do this. Why? Because the person wants to be rewarded by whosoever is in power. Few want to speak truth to the power. Individuals want to come and say, look, we want to do individual research, independent of whosoever influence, and then implement it so that we can all be better off. Our system is just appalling, but we just hope we can thrive once we get the basics. And Ilum is doing, Three Sisters doing well, because at least a lot of people are regretting now because they wish they knew certain informations when they got their offer letters, right? And they are also going to rewrite it if they are moving forward to a different employment. So that's just the issue, but we'll be fine. I take solace in the fact that we'll be fine. So,
Yeah, we need to be fine. Right. So we are done with inheritance tax. It's largely captured under realization gain tax or gift tax, right? But there are
yeah.
some people that usually will not be subjected to tax when they inherit some things, especially if you are like a spouse or former spouse to the person that died. You are a son, a child, son or daughter, or parent to the person that died. Those people are usually kind of exempted from any form of tax. Then, under our laws of intestacy, if you get any benefit, because if someone dies interstate and does not set up any will, the state has a way of sharing that among the wife, the children, sorry, the spouse, because it could be. Why do you always think the guy will die before the lady? Um, so the spouse, the living spouse, the children, and the family, if it goes that way, ordinarily no taxes are supposed to apply, right? Then the next question is, how can I reduce the amount I pay in tax? as a high income earner? This is a very interesting question. Um, to be honest, if you want to limit your tax payment, then earn low income. Assuming it's income tax, that's just on the lighter side. But the truth is, if you wait till you have earned the income, it is already too late because the tax law is there and you have earned the income. And the tax law establishes the applicability of that tax or burden on the income. So at that point, if you want to avoid the tax or if you want to dodge the tax, it's evasion, it's illegal. You can even be tried for that. It's very criminal, right? So I think um, how I want to look at this question is that if you want to be a high income earner, or you are a high income earner, but you know where the sources of your income are, the advice would rather be route that sources of income or route those income through sources that can afford you lower taxes. Because if you go left channel and you earn income from left channel, you can't apply the benefit that applies only to the right channel
That's
to
true.
that left channel income. And we've
Absolutely.
discussed this over and over again. The other session, you could go back to the video. There are things that you could do so that your income will be exempted or lowered, right? So if you're a high income earner, today what we just talked about, you could, and your bonus is very small, you could ask your employer to push a lot more into your bonus because there's the possibility that 15% of your annual basic salary, the bonus that corresponds to that amount will be taxed at 5%, rather than maybe the 25 that you pay every month, 30 that you pay every month, or 35. So don't wait till the income is earned. Like, educate yourself, I should say, then identify where income could pass through for your tax liability to go down, and
Yeah.
ensure that your income passes through those channels. That is
Yeah.
how you limit or reduce the tax that you pay. But the moment you already earn the income, unfortunately, there's no going
Yes.
back. If you
Yeah.
try to limit the tax, it is tax evasion and it is criminal. Yeah. So there are several ways. Yes, a high income earner could pay reduced taxes, but then you need to ascertain where those income should be coming from so that you earn those benefits, right? Then the next question is, who pays rent tax in Ghana? Very interesting. So generally speaking, rent tax is tax that applies on income. So let's look at a situation where a landlord leases out space to a tenant. Who is the one earning the income over here? Is the landlord. So the landlord is required to pay that tax. Or let me put it differently, the landlord is required to bear the burden of the tax, right? But then the tax can be paid in different ways. Ordinarily, when you are paying rent, you are supposed to deduct what we call withholding tax. So let me start with a company, then I'll come to an individual who is renting a space, right? If a company, because they are exposed to the tax authority or GRA, GRA can go there anytime. So this is what a company will do. If a company is engaging a landlord for space, and that space is for commercial purposes, I'll add another layer of complexity. A certain rate will apply. If that space is also for residential purpose, another rate will apply, different rate. What does commercial means? The person is renting the space out for people to use it to undertake business. So where your office is, if that property is rented, it means that landlord is renting out the space for commercial purposes. But where, let's say, the managing director resides, or let's say the bungalow or apartment of whomever, that is for residential purposes because people sleep there, right? Their families live there. So if a landlord gives space for that purpose, that is deemed as for residential purpose, right? Then the additional layer is anytime you are paying that money to them, and you are supposed to deduct tax from it. So let's say if the tax is 15%, it means you only pay rent of 85% to them. Then you go and pay the 15% to the Ghana Revenue Authority on their behalf. So you go and pay and say, oh, this money is for Dr. Idrisu, whom I've rented her space. Then they will issue you with a certificate with Dr. Idrisu's name. Then you come and give that certificate to Dr. Idrisu that by law, I shouldn't pay you the full rent of 100. I should pay you only 85 and I deducted 15 and I've paid the 15. This is evidence that that 15 has been paid in your name, right? The additional layer of complexity or analysis you need to do is you need to ask yourself or ask Dr. Idrisu, Dr. Idrisu, are you in the business of rental or you just have a property there that you use as investment and you are earning income from it? Because that will affect the rate. If Dr. Idrisu is using that space as, let's say, or Dr. Idrisu is in the business, let's say the real estate developers or property managers, if Dr. Idrisu is in the business of just renting things out, right, spaces out, then when you are paying Dr. Idrisu, you pay only 92.5% of the rent. Then 7.5% will be paid to GRE on her behalf, on the landlord's behalf, right? That is if the landlord is just in the business of rental, is 7.5. If the landlord is not in the business of rental, then the first two questions I ask come in. Are you renting the space for commercial purposes? Are you going to use that place for business? If yes, then you pay Dr. Idrisu only 85% of the money and pay 15% on her behalf at GRA. If you are using the space for residential purposes, then you pay Dr. Idrisu 92% of her money. Then you withhold 8% and go and pay to GRA on her behalf. So for businesses, this is done. If you're a company, you can't afford but to do this, right? But now let's come to the reality. When the tax law came in, 2015, but started applying from 2016, right? The new law, we used to have an old law that started from 2000 all the way to 2015. The new law anticipated that if they allow individuals like you and me to be withholding anyhow, that money will never come to the
Get.
treasury. Right. So they put in the law a requirement that if you are an individual, don't withhold. Pay the person's full money to him, then that person will go and declare his income for the year to GRA and pay their taxes. Okay. You don't have to do anything. But unfortunately, the Amendment Act, I think 924, came in 2017, 2018, thereabouts. It took off that exemption. So as we are speaking now, you and I, we have a responsibility under the tax law to not pay full rent to our landlords. That is if you are in rented spaces, right? We need to deduct 8% where we sleep. Or if we rented the space for, let's say, a container, a shop, or something of that sort, and we are using it for a business, we need to withhold 15% and pay only 85. So, strictly speaking, now, according to law, we have to withhold those monies from our landlord's money and pay to the GR on their behalf. So the
And
question,
you
who pays rent tax in Ghana? The burden will still be on the landlord because it's their money that you are taking out, right? But then it is you or the business that is renting the space, your or their responsibility to pay to GRA and get a credit certificate in the name of your landlord.
if
Has
you
this
really
been applicable? I think it's a
no,
bit low
no.
because how would GRE know that where I am is a rented space or it is my own space?
So
You can
that's the
apply the
inefficiency.
exactly. So I think Dr. Idrisu mentioned those laws that we have, and because we don't have a robust system to be able to implement, it hasn't been implemented. But at least the burden of rent tax lies on the landlord,
Yeah.
but the one who is supposed to pay on the landlord's behalf is the tenant. And it's usually done by tenant companies or businesses, but then individuals, although we are supposed to, in practice, we are not able to do that because the
So you
GRA
can
has
imagine closing the potential, the gap in this alone.
Yeah.
You can imagine, like in Accra, how much percentage of people are really landlords. Imagine closing this gap. You know, we're talking about billions of cedis to supplement our budget freely. You just need to bring in get the robust data, make sure things are right. Even the property rates we are getting in some part of Accra is appalling. Imagine paying a property tax, meanwhile your property is not valued. For somebody just come and say, how many rooms do you have? And so maybe one or two, they go around how many toilets of this, and they just say, oh, maybe the value of your property is 300,000. And even that, it's okay. I want to calculate your property rate is 250. Logic cannot hold this. So imagine closing the potential here, how much it can bring to the table than this nuisance taxes we keep bringing. We have the laws we are not implementing, and we keep bringing new laws. And these new laws we are bringing, because we like the legitimate ones, you could have actually gotten the money from, you are not. You are not pursuing poor people, starters, draining them. Because honestly, getting rich in Ghana in certain sectors are very easy. Assuming I join politics in the next 2 years, you wouldn't have an idea my net worth. Some colleagues I know that they did politics, and the kind of cars, the kind of houses they live in, they turn around to be motivational speakers, stealing. They won't be where they are, right? Tax them. There are those who will not even pay. You have a lot of those people having building, buying properties in their names and renting, and they've never paid tax. We have officials who are working with the authority itself and they are evading tax. Somebody said, look, when GRA came, their landlord told them that if they ask you, who are you in this, I'll say you are the younger brother. Dishonesty. So our system, when Trump said it was a shithole, it was true then and it's still true now. Because imagine having all these beautiful laws and will not implement them. And imagine having laws that you, the tenant, you dare not. Even the corporation, you have to be steady. The person can rent it for 100,000 because they want to pay. Let's say, so say that I've rented it for you this amount. Dishonesty. Your landlord can be giving a room to you maybe 1,000 cedis a month because of the tax. They will say, okay, when you go, tell them that I gave the room to you 500. It doesn't reduce anything he will take from you, but it actually reduce everything it is given to the government. How can things work? So it's appalling. Practicability is a no, even though the law is beautifully stated with whatever exemptions that is there in, but practicability is not really not our laws. Or the laws also function depending on who you are. There are certain things you do because it is you will not be punished. But there are certain things I do because it is me. My father is not a politician. I don't know anybody. I would pay for it. And they will come to score political points and said use the person as a scapegoat. Meanwhile, there are a lot of scapegoats running around that you can see and catch and refuse to catch them. So that's just it. But all in all, beautiful but practicability, I assure you that we are all thieves because they made us so. They don't allow us to exercise those rights. Right? They don't come clearly on what they actually want and they don't even make it attractive. You are muted.
Thank you very much. I have one final question here, but
Yeah.
then I see another question, I think, on the platform. Someone asking, so I'll attempt that. Then I come to the final question I have here.
All right.
Someone asked that if can the person divert some revenue to,
So philanthropy.
let's say, philanthropic activity or venture and pay lower taxes? Um, yes, but guided yes, and I'm going to explain the guidance, right? So, according to the Income Tax Act, if you are rightly set up as what we call a foundation, a charity, right, or a philanthropic venture, um, then any donation that you receive is exempt from income tax. But mind you, it is the company. So usually you can only use companies limited by guarantees
Mm-hmm.
to set up charities in Ghana. Because if you use companies limited by shares, um, all the profits or the excesses that this company or philanthropy will get, they will find its way into people's pockets. So
Mm-hmm.
in Ghana, you cannot use a company for philanthropy or charity. If you go to the registrar of companies, what we used to call the RGD, Registrar General's Department, right?
Mm-hmm.
And you want to set up a charity, they will say that you need to set it up as a company limited by guarantee, meaning no one specifically owns that company. Such a company that is engaged in philanthropy, if such a company receives payment, donations, those amounts are not subjected to tax. So that is one side. Then the other side is whomever is also making donation, assuming it's a company or entity, a
Mm-hmm.
donation to that charity, that company is allowed to deduct that donation from their revenue. So let's assume that at the end of the year, before you made a donation to a philanthropic venture or a charity, your profit was, let's say, $1 million, right? And you go and donate. So you were going to pay taxes on this $1 million, and you go and donate, let's say, 600,000 out of this $1 million to the philanthropy. You, the donor, you are allowed to deduct that 600,000 from your 1 million profit. Okay, then it's only the $400,000 that is left that would be taxed. So in essence, the 600,000 has been exempted from tax, right? Then this 600,000 now in the charity will also not be subject to tax. But don't forget that although you've pushed the money into charity, that money does not necessarily belong to you because the company is limited by guarantee and not limited by shares. So you cannot, push those monies back to yourself as dividend. That is not possible. So you can get, that's why I said yes, but a guided yes. So I think what people typically do is that if they have some necessary expenditures to make, so like these days you see a lot of these old school reunions, Santa Clausians, Marantia, Amanfo, all those things, absence and all. Um, and a lot of time they go back to the school to help, right? But you notice that the monies that they contribute to go to the schools to help are monies that they have suffered taxes on.
Yeah.
So what can rather be done is for, let's say, a charity to be set up. Then instead of them using their pocket monies to finance those projects, the ones that are, let's say, business owners or entrepreneurs, they rather make donations from their business
Yeah. So
to
that directly.
this charity. Then this charity will undertake that
Yep.
social project. In that case, those monies that you push there or in quotes diverted were not subjected to tax. But I think what we typically do over here is we let everything come to us taxed, then what is in our pocket is what we go support the project with, and that is not the very best. So I think it can be done, but it's guided because it's not like the moment you do it, the money is yours. No,
So, yeah.
I mean the parliamentarians are also smart enough to make sure that you don't easily bypass
Yeah.
the tax law. Yeah. So I hope that answers your question. You can let us know if there's another query. But then I'll go to the final question, and there will be a lot of explanations here. And I'm sure this will also apply to a lot of people. Um, and the question is, how are irregular income earners gig performance at a show or concert taxed in Ghana? Right. So this covers, let's say, comedians and whatnot, um, those influencers and all those guys, right? So I will quickly go through. I will touch one side, which is the income tax. Then I will touch the VAT side as well. But let's go to the income tax because that is the money coming to the performer, right? So income tax, it depends. Number one, whether you are undertaking that performance in your own name as an individual, or you have set up a business and you are routing that performance through that business. So I know sometimes some people have agents. What I do not know is if they have their own setup. I know some artists, they have their own businesses that you have to sign contracts with that business, then they will perform under that business, right? So that's what I'm talking about over here. Are they coming to you as Dr. Idrisu? We want you to come and perform, be an MC for us. Or they are coming to Dr. Idrisu's business. They say that Dr. Idrisu, we assign a contract with your business, then you perform under the business because that will also affect the tax implication, right? So let's keep that in mind. Now, let me quickly say that if the payment to you is an endorsement fee, then you only pay tax at 10%, period. So it's like a tithe. So the guy paying you will take the tithe out 10% and give you 90%, and that's the end of it. So if it's 1 million, the person takes $100,000, the $900,000 comes to you. That is the end. I specifically mentioned them because they have a special treatment in the Income Tax Act. But every other person, a comedian, influencer, or whomever, if the payment to you is just for a performance and it's not an endorsement fee, then ordinarily you will pay tax like every one of us, whether in employment or whatever. So your tax rate starts from 0% to 35%, depending on the level of income that you receive. So Ghana uses a progressive tax rate. If your income is small, the rate is lower. The moment it gets bigger, the rate gets higher and higher and higher. So someone earning, let's say, 1 million would have suffered tax at 0% at the minimum wage, suffered tax at 5%, some small amount,
So that
10%,
makes sense.
another amount, 17 and a half, 25, 30, then 35, right? If it's beyond 50,417 cedis, 0.67, and 0.67 cedis or 67 pesos, then you are paying tax at 35%, right? So it's from 0 to 35, depending on the amount, right? Then now, if you're an individual and you did this in your name, no recognized business, then it means you have to file your own returns at the end of the year. So at the end of January to December, the calendar year, you have 4 months to file your own personal income tax return and declare the income you've earned. In an
Yeah.
ideal Ghana, declare your own income and pay the taxes based on the 0 to 35% calculation, right? But then mind you, the person that may have paid you would have already deducted 7.5% because you are performing a service. But this 7.5% can be used to reduce your final tax liability. Okay, so let's say at the end of the day, your final tax liability is 30%. Then it means you should pay
Yeah.
taxes at only 22.5, right? Good, because 7.5 has already been withheld by the guy that paid you. This is an individual doing this job in his
Yeah.
name.
Yeah.
If you do it under a business, the good thing is that you don't pay tax on the full thing. You only pay tax on your profits. And that is the difference. If you go in your name, no recognized business, and you go and file your returns, you don't have any scope of saying that, oh, I brought in chairs, I hired another co-MC, and that cost me this much. Do you get it? You don't have that room. But then if you sign this contract through a business, whether a company or even your own sole proprietorship, right? A recognized business, you are allowed to, because those Those assessments are based on profit and not the money that you've received, the payment. So you are allowed to bring in the payment as your income or revenue. Then every relevant expense that you incurred for the benefit of that show or concert can be allowed as a deduction. Then what is left, the profit, or last, that one is what will be subjected to tax. Okay? But still under the business, we've stated that you could use a company or you could use your own sole proprietorship. Like you're an entrepreneur, you just set up something, Dixon, whatever, MC events, right, or venture. Because you are still an individual, you still pay tax from the 0 to 35%. But mind you, this time around, the liability will be very low because you are paying the tax on what? On your profit and not the gross revenue that you received or the gross payment that you received. So it's important that if you undertake these gigs or performances, you route it through a business contract so that you only pay taxes on your profit and not the entire payment. If you go as an individual in your name, every payment that comes to you is required to be included in your personal income tax return at the end of the year and pay tax on the full amount, right? Again, the person paying you may have deducted tax of 7.5. So at the end of the year, you cut your tax liability, then you deduct the 7.5 from it. If there's something more to pay, then you top up and pay. Then still under business, we've talked about sole proprietorship. Sole proprietorship is still like the individual. It's not really taken away from the individual. But if it's a company, then you pay tax at the profit. Yeah. Okay. The past government introduced something we call GSL. It's also at 5%. So you could say that technically your tax is at 30%. Then because it's a company, money to the company is no money to you. So the company will have to pay you what we call dividend, right? When the company pays you dividend, you pay tax on that dividend at 8%, right? So effectively, but that 8% is on um, your profit after the tax of 30%, right? Then 8% will apply to that. So effectively, you can say that is only 5.6%. So with the levy called the growth and sustainability levy of 5%, you pay a total tax of 35.6%, but it is still on your profit. Let's say after 2028, if they don't increase the sunset, they don't extend the sunset clause on that levy again, and let's say that 5% is scrapped forever, then it means the tax that you only pay is 30.6%, which is the 25 at the company level, and when the company was paying dividend, the 8%, which is effectively 5.6% of profit that was paid to you. So I think the major highlight here is that it's important that if you're an individual, whatever performance that you set out to do, do it through a business. Because if you route it through a business, you are allowed to take out all expenditure that you incur. So if you are lucky and at the end of the day you broke even, there's no profit, there's no loss, you don't pay any taxes, right? Or if you run at a loss, you don't pay any taxes. But then if you go in your own name, so Dexon, MC, and that payment is given to me, then taxes 0 to 35%. So that is on the income tax side. Then I'll quickly touch on the VAT. So in the VAT Act, according to Section 11, if you are a promoter or someone who undertakes public entertainment, anytime you offer your service, in fact, 2 days before you go for the concert, you are supposed to go and register for VAT so that whatever that you charge your customer, you add VAT on top. Similarly, if you were issuing, let's say, tickets to your customers, the requirement is that whatever the ticket fare is, you add VAT on top of it, right? So again, VAT is indirect tax. You don't have to bear the tax, but then you will have to collect it from your customers, add it to your fee, collect it from your customers, and remit that to the GRE. If you don't do that, the law allows the GRE to assume that the price that you charge for the ticket or for the performance is already inclusive of VAT. So they come to you, they will take part of your money as VAT, and that won't look so good. Yeah, so that is it on the VAT side, and we've already tagged on the income tax side. Major highlight is better to route that through a business because that will allow you to deduct all your expenses. Then it's what is left, the final income that you pay taxes on them. Yeah. All right. So I think I've exhausted all the questions I have here. If you still have time to go over some of the questions at your end, Dr. Idrisu, we can do that.
Yeah, I think we are exhausted to what is just applicable and more important. However, I know we might do a third session, and I'm thinking that we take out some sessions of the budget where we can really talk about how it would, affect businesses and individuals. So you've given us a good show, and we will not want to let go. And in fact, it will be a practice that whenever we have a budget, we come on here to take what concern the charcoal sellers, daughters, and sons, right? Because that is the core mandate of Inum 360 to change the status quo, to bring in the education closer to the very vulnerable people who this concerns. So I think we might do a test session, and maybe in the test session, if we have other concerns, we can add it. But we can do a test session where we have to look at the budget, some key things that would affect us and how we should adjust, you know, to be able to fit in. But without much ado, that was an insightful one, and I'm sure whosoever come across this video would be enlightened and getting all the basics right. Myself, I'm not really an accounting person, but of course, I did tax, so at least I have an idea. But of course, it was a lot of learning experience for me, and all I can say is may God bless you. I'm sure all those who come across this video would say a prayer for you for this wonderful, well researched presentation. And what makes it interesting is bringing it down to our level, right, for everybody else to understand what that means and its implication to their businesses and their individual operations. I think that's the difference we represent. Thank you so much, and I look forward to see you in the third session.
All right. Thank you very much. Yeah, we can certainly arrange a time for this.
Yeah, yeah. In
Yeah.
fact, I would maybe I'll bring a female who is also a chartered tax
Okay.
accountant to add up so that it would solidify the conversation
Yeah.
on how the market money will send to the market, what that means, as to whether the better Ghana agenda will really better our lives, as to whether the implementation and then what is read is the same,
Mm.
and how we can track this further so that when we are giving our feedbacks, we're giving objective one, devoid of looking for anybody to compensate us for the work done, just being objective citizens and helping the communities in which we represent. Because I maintain that our education would not make any sense if it does not come back to benefit the very people that we represent. And this is a change we yearn for. That we can collect the salaries, but how can the pastor in the church, our younger siblings, our younger selves thrive based on the knowledge people are having and running around international consults? I mean, we will get the dollars fine, but we also want to get the education. So thank you for coming. May God bless you.
All right. Thank you very much. Thanks everyone. Talk to you later. Have a good week ahead.